You're listening to Big World Network.
Just Kill Me, Episode 5, For Better or Worse. Written by Wendy Herman. Read by Wendy Herman. I sighed. Not one of those frustrated wish-it-were-over kind, but the wow, I have a new lease on life kind. And the smile that accompanied it, well, let's just say I think it could have launched 1,000 ships. 48 hours before, I had been a woman undone. I had experienced the near loss of a child and had been forever changed, and I didn't like it one bit. Just when I thought all I wanted in the world was to go back to the way things were before, I was shown what my life could be, what I could be. And the two men in my life would be there to support me during every step of my journey. Or so I deluded myself into thinking. I was making supper for my family, an activity I had done thousands of times. But today, this day, I was preparing spaghetti and meatballs with more gusto than ever before. Blaze and Rowan were sitting at the breakfast bar, each hoping to be the first to get a taste. And Levi was doing homework on his laptop at the small table in the atrium. He was writing a paper on Marie Antoinette, and I was cheerfully informing him that not only did she absolutely not say anything about eating cake, ever, but that she was simply a young girl who'd been forced into an arranged marriage and made to live far from her home, where she was hated the moment she set foot on French soil. She was a wife and mother, I told him, under dire circumstances, and did the best with what she was given. But this website says, he started, but I headed him off, lest he be sorely misinformed, like most of the American public. Find another website, I instructed him. Search for Marie Antoinette did not say let them eat cake, or something like that. He reluctantly complied. Needless to say, this was a topic near and dear to my heart, and he knew he wasn't going to get away with a half-assed paper full of half-truths and outright lies. I read once that, for hundreds of years, history was put to paper by monks who believed women didn't have souls and were dirty, impure creatures. Since then, I'd always been a silent champion of women who, I believed, were essentially given the shaft when it came to the version of history that was actually written down. I couldn't help but think I was vindicating them, even just a little, by following my heart and pursuing my long-forgotten dream of being an FBI agent. I would not squander the precious time I had by regretting all the things I wish I'd done, and I definitely wouldn't let my sex limit my possibilities. I had 10 days to say goodbye to my old life and prepare for my new one, and I was going to make every minute count. I felt sure my kids would want to nominate me for Mother of the Year by the time I started the training program. Just as I was draining the pasta in the sink, my husband entered the kitchen through the door to the garage, seemingly exhausted from a long day, but a smile broke across his face when he smelled supper. Spaghetti and meatballs were his favorite meal. He walked over to the sink and gave me a soft kiss, then did his usual rounds with the boys, starting with Rowan. "Choke on any quarters today?" he asked the preschooler, ruffling his hair. What the hell? My first instinct was to throw the full colander of steaming spaghetti at his head, but that would set a very bad example for my boys, so I settled for a lame and unsatisfying retort. "Not funny, Trevor." When he glanced at me, wincing, I gave him a look that clearly told him his remark had cost him dearly. No naked time later, no matter how much foreplay he promised. "Sorry," he said. "Too little, too late, pal." He stepped over to Blaze and they high-fived, their special routine, and Trevor asked him how his science test had gone at school. Well, I had forgotten about that, so good for him. He was replacing husband points with daddy points. "I got 100, was the response. Not surprising. Perfect scores were the norm for our middle child, who craved being the best at everything he did. Sometimes he even brought home above perfect scores. God bless whoever invented extra credit. As Trevor made his way to our eldest, still revered as the hero of the household, Levi was holding his head in one hand, elbow firmly planted on the table, while he scrolled on the laptop with the other hand. His face was less than serene. "What you working on, bud?" Trevor asked. Levi looked up as if he'd just noticed his father's presence for the first time. "Hey, Dad," he started. Report on Marie Antoinette. Mom's making me work for this one. Perfect scores were not a priority for this child. The quicker he could get an assignment done, the better. Quality be damned. He must get that from his father, I thought to myself. Ah, Trevor replied, let them eat cake. Levi looked up at me as if to say, see, I was right. Trevor, I just told Levi that she never said anything of the kind, I exclaimed. The whole let them eat cake thing was someone's Hollywood version of the truth. Really? He asked, then just shrugged. He leaned over Levi's shoulder, placing a gentle hand on the other one. Listen to your mom, Lee. She's the smart one. He whispered loudly, then stood and beamed at me, hoping to see that I had softened since his quarter remark. How could I not with that dazzling smile? I pretended to glare at him, but then broke into a smile in return. He might just get to sleep in the bed with me after all. After stuffing ourselves with pasta, meatballs, garlic bread, salad, and brownies and ice cream. No, honey, I'm not pregnant, really. Trevor offered to get the boys bathed and in bed. That wasn't so unusual, but afterward he found me in the master bedroom folding laundry, and he picked up a towel, his sincere attempt at a trifold causing me to bite my bottom lip to keep the snicker from surfacing. You're incredibly helpful this evening, I said, implying a question. Well, I had a bit of an epiphany myself this week. Today, actually, he answered mysteriously. A few minutes went by, and he continued to make more work for me by poorly folding towel after helpless towel, but I said nothing. Clearly he was waiting for me to coax an explanation out of him. All right, I was in a pretty good mood, and still floating in a pasta coma that promised to last well into the night, so I decided to play. Would you like to elaborate, or do I get to guess? I asked. Well, I realize that maybe I haven't been the best husband. I stopped folding and looked at him, but he was reaching for yet another defenseless towel to almost fold. I decided to make it last as long as I could. Maybe? Usually epiphanies are a little more certain, I teased. I'm serious, Frey, he responded. I remember when we had Levi, and we had that big discussion about how we're a team, and we're in this together, he stammered. Suddenly I didn't want to play around anymore. He was really trying to connect with me as we stood across our king-size bed from one another, sorting Superman undies. I remember, I started. We agreed that we were partners, and no matter how tired we were at the end of the day, we would be, what did we call it? 50-50 parents, right? He smiled, happy we were on the same page. Yeah, he took a deep breath. So I realized that maybe I'm not living up to our agreement. He opened his mouth to continue, but couldn't find the words. You know, I do realize how tough your job is, and that does count for something, I offered, and I meant it. He thought about that for a moment, then responded. You know, I've been telling myself that for years, but I can't justify it anymore. I want to do my share. Plus, I like being here with the boys, with you. You've made our home a sanctuary, and I don't show my gratitude for that nearly enough. Whoa. I found myself thinking of the old horror flick Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but couldn't remember for the life of me how to tell a pod person from a human. Wasn't it something about a seam on the back of the neck? I shook my head back to reality. I don't know what to say, honey, I whispered. It would be wonderful if you could spend more time at home, but you don't have to give up your guy time with Rip. I know how much that means to you. My mention of Rip made him cringe, but I pretended not to notice. I was hoping he would break down and tell me what was going on between the two of them, but that didn't seem to be on his agenda. I let it go this time, but I was determined to find out what that mysterious argument was about, eventually. I'm not married to Rip, he said. Plus, we still have our weekly dinners with him. But you don't want me tagging along I argued, but he cut me off. Don't worry about my guy time, please, he interjected. I get plenty at work. His job as a day trader was horrendously male-dominated. It involved a 45-minute commute to the city and miserably long hours, but he loved it, and I refused to be one of those wives who whined and complained about my husband's choice of profession. After all, it was my choice to stay at home, and it was his salary, which he worked his ass off for, that allowed it. And now it was my choice to go back to work, and I was confident he would be just as supportive as he was when I gave up my career to raise our boys. I guess I hadn't woken up completely yet, but I was about to. So I wanted to talk about this FBI thing, he said, abruptly changing the subject. Yes, I asked tentatively. We hadn't really discussed it in private yet. I didn't want to admit I'd been avoiding it, but... Are you going to put the boys in daycare after school? I was just wondering if you'd thought that far ahead, and if you'd looked into cost, he said, trailing off. I made a sincere attempt to not be offended by this. It was a valid question after all. Okay, I started. First of all, Rip said the training hours are 8 to 2, so I don't even have to worry about after-school care until I'm a full-up agent, I said, my voice even and emotionless. Second, by the time we need care, I will have a paycheck, so cost won't be an issue, I assured him. I was thinking about the Learning Treehouse downtown, I informed him, but he didn't let me finish. Isn't that the most expensive one in town? He accused. Because it's the best, I replied. Besides, we only need care for Blaze and Rowan. We stared at each other across the bed for a few seconds. His eyes were alive, almost angry, and I had no idea why. This was the best thing that had happened to me in a long time, and I thought he would be just as happy for me as I was. Isn't that what love was all about? Wanting the other person to be happy, no matter the cost? And I didn't think the cost was all that much, at least not for him. His life wasn't about to change drastically. He would still go to work all day and come home for supper, which would magically appear on the dining room table, not to mention his clean socks and underwear magically appearing in his dresser drawer. That reminded me of something else we hadn't discussed yet. I'm going to hire a cleaning lady. I was no longer in the mood to beat around the bush. What? He exclaimed, to which I gave him a "the boys are sleeping" look, and he took a breath and lowered his voice. How much is that going to cost? He demanded in a loud whisper. At that, I threw the jeans I was trying to fold back on the bed in frustration. What the hell is wrong with you? I asked. We could afford daycare and a cleaning lady now, and you know it. So what's really bothering you? He hesitated, then the words came fast. Maybe I don't want you to do this. Maybe I like our life the way it is. Maybe... He stopped, clearly afraid to say what he was thinking. Just say it, I encouraged. Maybe I'm a little hurt you didn't ask me first. I think I stopped breathing for a second. Ask you? As in, your permission? I probed. Well, yeah, he answered, then saw my eyes on fire. I mean, no, not permission, exactly. More like approval. This only stoked the fire. So, all this talk about 50-50 parenting and wanting to help out more around the house, you are offering to lower yourself to these menial tasks as long as I stay home and be your indentured servant forever? Come on, Freya, you're being overly dramatic, he reasoned. We are equal as parents, but as far as keeping our home running smoothly, well, I pay the bills and you take care of all the little daily stuff. I thought that was our agreement. I'm willing to make the sacrifice of being home more and helping out with housework. I'm asking for you to make a small sacrifice in return. What happened to I love being here with you and the boys? I do, he insisted, but you're not listening to what I'm trying to say. Oh, I hear you, I shouted, ignoring his gesture to lower my volume. You think washing a dish now and then is the same level of sacrifice as me giving up a dream I've had since college. Come on. You don't really think you can be an FBI agent, do you? And there it was. The moment I realized I had no idea who the man in my bedroom was.
You're listening to Big World Network.